The concrete slab missed Declan Morris's skull by 3 inches. 23 years of structural engineering, and this was the closest he'd ever come to being buried alive by his own profession. The irony wasn't lost on him. The tunnel had been under renovation for 6 months. Declan's signature on the inspection reports. Tonight, a midnight walkthrough was supposed to be routine. Instead, when the vibration from a passing truck rattled the ceiling, a slab broke free like God himself flicking it loose. The chunk exploded against the floor where Declan had been standing a heartbeat earlier, dust rising in a choking gray cloud. Jesus Christ, Declan. Tommy Fitzgerald's voice echoed through the cavern, boots clattering on wet concrete. Are you alive? Declan pushed himself up, brushing grit off his jacket. His heart pounded, not with fear but with the electric thrum of survival. Still breathing, he called back, voice steady. At 48, he knew the difference between panic and adrenaline. Tonight, adrenaline had carried him just far enough. The drive home stretched longer than it should have. Rain hammered the windshield, headlights slicing through mist, brake lights bleeding red across slick asphalt. Declan's hands tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. He wasn't thinking about death. Engineers didn't think that way. He was thinking about the margin of error. 3 inches. 3 damn inches between him and oblivion. By the time he pulled into his driveway, the rain had eased to a drizzle. Through the kitchen window, warm light spilled out across the hedges. Camille stood at the stove, auburn hair pulled into a knot, stirring a pot of beef stew. 19 years of marriage, 2 daughters in college, and he still felt a surge of gratitude seeing her there. Like the world outside was chaos, but she remained the anchor. He stepped inside, water dripping from his jacket. The scent of onions and beef stock filled the room. There's the conquering hero, Camille said, glancing over her shoulder. Her tone was light, almost teasing, but Declan heard no curiosity in it, no concern. She hadn't asked why he was late. He dropped into a chair, muscles aching from tension he hadn't noticed until now. The tunnel slab gave way during inspection. Missed me by inches. Camille kept stirring, lips pressed in a thin line. You should have been wearing your helmet. I was, Declan said. He forced a chuckle, trying to soften the weight of it. I was thinking, maybe it's time we finally take that vacation. You know, the one we keep putting off. Just a week somewhere warm. Mexico, the Keys, doesn't matter. After tonight, I think we've earned it. She set the spoon down harder than necessary, metal clanging against the pot. Declan, we've got tuition bills stacked on the counter. Isabel's car insurance is due next month. And don't forget Ava's rent in Philadelphia. You think we can just fly off to the beach? Her words landed heavier than the concrete slab. Declan studied her face, the faint crease between her brows, the clipped annoyance in her tone. He'd expected worry, maybe even relief that he'd come home in one piece. Instead, she was irritated, like he'd suggested buying a sports car instead of survival. I almost died tonight, Declan said quietly. You didn't? Camille replied, ladling stew into bowls. So let's be practical, not dramatic. She set the bowl in front of him, the steam rising like smoke. Declan stared at it, appetite gone. A thought he'd never entertained before slid into his mind, unwelcome but impossible to shake. Something about her dismissal felt wrong. Camille sat across from him, scrolling her phone between bites, her focus elsewhere. Declan spooned stew mechanically, the taste muted. Rain tapped against the windows. The house felt suddenly foreign, like a structure he'd inspected 1,000 times but never truly tested for cracks. 3 inches had saved him in the tunnel. Tonight, he couldn't help but wonder what margin of error existed in his marriage. Declan couldn't sleep. Not after the tunnel, not after Camille's reaction. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the steady tick of the clock filling the silence. Camille was beside him, breathing evenly, her back turned. He replayed the moment in the kitchen over and over. Near-death confession, brushed off like a grocery list. Her annoyance hadn't been about money, not really. It had been something else, something sharper. His gut told him so. And if there was one thing an engineer trusted, It was data and gut instinct in equal measure. A vibration broke the silence. Declan turned his head. On Camille's nightstand, a phone buzzed, screen lighting up. Only it wasn't her phone, the one with the floral case she carried everywhere. This one was black, plain, anonymous. The text glowed against the dark. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Room 412 at the Marriott. Fill you. Declan's chest tightened, but his face didn't move. He lay still, listening to her breathing, making sure she hadn't stirred. Slowly, he swung his legs out of bed and padded barefoot across the hardwood floor. Down the stairs, his pulse hammering but steady. In the kitchen, he flicked on the low light above the sink. Camille's purse sat on the counter, the leather strap twisted. He opened it carefully, methodical as if inspecting a faulty beam. Inside, past the wallet and makeup bag, he found hotel receipts. Marriott. Charges on nights she'd sworn she was working late. Declan spread the papers on the counter, smoothing them flat with the heel of his hand. His brain broke it down automatically. Second phone. Explicit message. Hotel receipts. Data. Evidence. Hypothesis. Camille was cheating. His first instinct wasn't rage. Not the kind that explodes in shouting. It was colder, cleaner. The same focus he felt on job sites when a flaw in the structure revealed itself, when one crack in concrete hinted at collapse. Declan gathered the receipts and tucked them back where he'd found them, careful not to leave a trace. Then he stood in the kitchen, gripping the counter, staring at the dark window. Rainwater streaked the glass, reflecting his own face back at him. For 19 years, he'd built a home brick by brick, mortgage, tuition, insurance, bills. He thought those foundations were solid. But tonight, with one text on a burner phone, he saw it for what it was. A structure rotting from the inside. Upstairs, Camille shifted, her footsteps soft against the floorboards as she moved in her sleep. Declan listened, jaw clenched. He wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. The confrontation was demolition, and demolition without a plan left rubble. He needed more. Proof. A blueprint for what came next. He poured himself a glass of water, drained it, and set it on the counter with deliberate calm. Then he walked back upstairs, slid under the covers, and stared at the ceiling until dawn. Beside him, Camille slept soundly, her second phone inches away, glowing faintly in the dark like a warning light on a failing structure. Declan had never been much for bars on weeknights, but there was one place that fit the night's weight. The Iron Horse, a brick-and-wood tavern tucked between the river and the old rail yard. The kind of place where the jukebox still ate quarters and the floor smelled faintly of smoke even though the band had been in place for years. Tommy Fitzgerald was already there, nursing a double whiskey at their usual corner booth. College friend turned private investigator Tommy had aged into his profession like leather into a saddle, creased, tough, and reliable. He stood when Declan arrived, clasping his shoulder hard. "Word is you had a slab try to crush your head," Tommy said, sliding back into his seat. "And here you are, upright and breathing. Lucky bastard." Declan ordered a whiskey neat before sitting. He didn't waste time. He pulled the photos from his coat pocket, the Marriott receipts he'd copied on the office scanner earlier that morning, along with a note of the second phone's number. He spread them across the scarred table. Tommy glanced down, then up at him. "That hers?" Declan nodded once. "Found it last night. Buzzed at midnight. Message about Marriott, room 412. Explicit enough there's no mistaking it." Tommy's eyes hardened, the easy grin gone. He picked up the receipts, flicking through them with the practiced precision of a man who'd seen too many lives gutted by infidelity. "You want me to dig? I need facts," Declan said flatly. "Not suspicions, not emotions. Facts. Who he is. How long it's been going on. What else I don't know." The drinks arrived. Declan downed half his glass in one swallow, the burn sharp and grounding. An hour later, Tommy leaned back in the booth, jaw tight. "It's Wesley Klein." Declan's hand froze on the rim of his glass. The name landed like a wrecking ball. The surgeon. The same. Reputation's worse than gossip makes it out to be. Dirty deals with hospital contracts. Rumors of kickbacks, insurance fraud, skimming off Medicare reimbursements. He's been investigated before, but nothing stuck. He's slippery. Declan's chest tightened. Betrayal was one thing. He could almost stomach the humiliation. But tying herself to a man like Klein? That was another level. Tommy continued, voice low. If she's in with him, Declan, it's not just adultery. He drags people down with him. Nurses, admin staff, anyone he touches. If Camille's involved, it's not just her reputation at risk. It's your finances, your house, even your career by association. The man's poison. Declan stared into the amber swirl of his whiskey. His mind ticked like a drafting compass, plotting angles. Camille hadn't just betrayed him in bed. She'd tied herself to a man capable of destroying everything he'd built. She mocks me to him, Declan said finally, his voice controlled, though each word felt like it had been dragged across broken glass. I saw it in the texts. Call me boring, predictable, a placeholder. Tommy's face didn't flinch, but his eyes said enough. He'd heard it all before in 100 variations, but this was his friend. Declan set his glass down with deliberate calm. I want every detail. Times, locations, messages. If she's stupid enough to leave a trail, I want it all. Tommy nodded. You'll get it. But Declan, listen to me. Don't go cowboy on this. Men like Klein don't fight fair. They buy their way out. They burn everyone else down to save themselves. Declan's lips thinned. Then I'll make sure there's nothing left for him to buy his way out of. The jukebox croaked out a tired Springsteen song as the two men sat in silence, whiskey burning slow. Outside, freight trains groaned past the rail yard, steel wheels grinding against steel rails. Declan wasn't a man for vengeance speeches. But tonight, as he stared at the evidence spread across the table, he felt the controlled weight of something colder than anger. A plan forming inch by inch, beam by beam, like the start of a demolition blueprint. Declan waited until the house was silent. Camille had gone upstairs early, claiming a headache, her footsteps light and untroubled. He stayed in his study, the glow of his desk lamp spilling across drafting papers and inspection reports. At midnight, when her breathing upstairs had settled into rhythm, he opened the drawer where he'd hidden the second phone. He turned it over in his palm like evidence in a lab. Black, nondescript, no case. Burners had no sentiment, just function. He powered it on, the screen lighting his face in pale blue. Messages filled the feed. Not one or two, dozens, hundreds. Weeks and months of conversations with Wesley Klein. He scrolled slowly, jaw tightening with every line. Dinner at Luca's again, don't worry, he'll never know. That man's a walking calendar, every day the same. You make me feel alive. You deserve better than him, Camille. You deserve me. Declan leaned back in his chair, thumb pausing on one exchange. Camille hadn't just confided in Klein. She mocked him. Declan's predictable. He'll die at his desk or under a bridge beam. Sometimes I wonder if he even notices I'm gone. Klein's reply, then let him rot in concrete dust. We'll build our own future. Declan's stomach tightened, but the anger that came wasn't a storm. It was a slow, grinding pressure, like two tectonic plates forcing against each other. He kept scrolling. The messages grew darker. References to accounts, spreadsheets, and accessing files at the hospital. Talk of Medicare numbers, falsified billing, sharing the cut. Camille's words, not Klein's. She wasn't just an accessory. She was actively conspiring. Declan rubbed his temples, staring at the screen. Adultery was betrayal of the heart, but fraud, federal fraud, was betrayal of survival. Of the roof over their heads. Of the very foundation he'd spent his life protecting. One last message froze him. Once his pension clears, we can disappear. Wesley, I want this. I'm tired of playing wife to a man who doesn't matter. Declan's hand tightened around the phone until his knuckles cracked. For 19 years, he had been the provider, the planner, the man who made sure bills were paid and daughters had what they needed. And here was Camille, conspiring to gut the very life he built, mocking him while she did it. He set the phone down, forcing himself to breathe. Anger without control was demolition without blueprints. And Declan Morris was a builder. He would not swing wildly at the walls. He would study the structure, find the weak points, and bring the whole thing down clean. He shut off the phone, slid it back into the drawer, and poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon. Staring into the amber glass, he let the truth harden inside him. This wasn't about saving a marriage anymore. This was about survival, justice, and making sure Camille's contempt buried her instead of him. Tommy slid the manila envelope across the booth like it contained dynamite. Declan didn't open it right away. He just stared at it, the weight of what it represented pressing into his chest. "You're not going to like what's in there," Tommy said, voice low, steady. "But you already know it." Declan finally tugged the clasp and pulled out the contents. Surveillance photos, grainy but clear enough. Camille and Klein, arm in arm outside the Marriott. A kiss in the parking lot. Her laugh captured mid-frame, head tilted back the way she used to with him years ago. He set those aside and looked at the hospital documents Tommy had slipped in. Billing codes, red flags, notes from whistleblowers. Medicare fraud spelled out in black and white. And Camille's name connected to access logs she had no business touching. Declan's throat tightened, but his hands stayed steady. He flipped through the pages like a man inspecting blueprints, line by line, until there was no doubt left. His suspicions had hardened into fact. Camille wasn't just cheating. She was complicit in a crime that could strip him of everything. Tommy broke the silence. "I've seen a lot of men destroyed by women like this. They either lash out, blow everything up, or they crumple. But you've got something they don't." Declan raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "A mind that doesn't panic. You see structures, weak points. You know where to push so the whole thing comes down without crushing you in the rubble." Declan exhaled slowly, leaning back against the booth. "So that's what I'll do. No yelling matches. No begging. No bargaining." His voice was calm, almost too calm. "I'll cut the supports out from under her. Legally. Financially. And when the dust settles, she'll be the one buried." Later that night, back home, he lay in bed beside Camille. She smelled faintly of hotel soap. Her excuses earlier in the evening flat and hollow. She'd said she was working late, traffic, paperwork. Lies delivered with a casual tone, like he was too dull to notice. Declan stared at the ceiling in the dark, every muscle tight with restraint. The old Declan, the man who thought marriage was compromise and patience, might have confronted her right then, demanded answers. But that man had nearly been killed under a tunnel slab and had watched his wife sell their life for hotel rooms and dirty money. The new Declan was done with half measures. By dawn, he had a plan. First, the lawyer, securing every dollar, every asset before she could bleed him dry. Second, the FBI, because fraud on that scale wouldn't vanish under hospital rugs forever. Third, silence, keeping his knowledge hidden until the trap closed tight. He turned his head, studying her in the dim morning light. Camille slept soundly, lips parted, a faint smile still lingering. He felt nothing. Not love, not grief, not even rage. Just clarity. She thought she was playing him for a fool. But Declan Morris had built his life on structures, and he knew this much better than she did. When cracks appeared, you didn't patch them with lies. You demolished and rebuilt. And tonight, he decided, demolition began. Declan called his daughter's home on a Saturday afternoon. Rain hammered the gutters outside, the house quiet except for the steady tick of the old wall clock in the living room. He sat in his chair, a manila envelope on the coffee table, waiting. Ava arrived first, 21, sharp-eyed from college but weary from city living. Isabel rolled in 20 minutes later, earbuds dangling, perfume strong enough to choke. Camille, conveniently, had errands. Declan had timed it that way. This conversation wasn't for her. They slouched onto the couch, phones in hand, waiting for him to get on with it. Declan studied them the same way he studied stress fractures in concrete. Tiny cracks that told you where the collapse would come. "I'm going to say this once," he began, voice level. "Your mother is having an affair with Dr. Wesley Klein, and she's tied herself into his fraud operation. Medicare, billing scams, the works. I've got the proof right here. He tapped the envelope. Ava blinked, confusion clouding her face. Isabel scoffed, rolling her eyes. Seriously, Dad? This is pathetic. Are you digging through Mom's things because you're insecure? Declan's jaw flexed, but he didn't raise his voice. These aren't suspicions. They're documents, receipts, messages, surveillance photos. Your mother is not who you think she is. Isabel leaned forward, venom in her voice. Or maybe you're not who you think you are. Mom's been miserable for years, stuck with you. You work, you lecture, you sit in that chair like some sad old man. She deserves better. You don't even notice her half the time. The words hit harder than the tunnel slab. Declan stared at her. Steady, controlled, but inside something cracked. Ava spoke softly, hesitantly. Dad, I don't know. I've heard her talk about being unhappy, about how you never change. Part of me thought maybe she was right. Declan let the silence hang. He looked at them, the two girls he'd worked double shifts for, the ones whose tuition checks he'd sweated over, the ones he thought were his legacy. And here they sat, poisoned, echoing Camille's lines back at him like rehearsed scripts. You think unhappiness justifies betrayal? He asked, voice low, dangerous. You think lies and crimes are a solution to boredom? Isabel crossed her arms. At least she had the guts to do something about it. That was it. The final fracture. Declan rose slowly, towering over them. His voice didn't rise, but it sharpened like steel. Get out. Ava looked up, shocked. What? You heard me. Both of you. Out of my house. Isabel scoffed again, grabbing her purse. Fine. Run back to your whiskey and blueprints. No wonder Mom hates living here. Declan's hand tightened into a fist at his side. But he didn't swing, didn't shout. Controlled. Always controlled. You'll get no more tuition money from me. No rent checks. No car insurance. You want to side with her? Live with the consequences. Ava hesitated, tears pricking her eyes. Dad, please. Out. Declan repeated. Colder now. You made your choice. They left without looking back, the door slamming against the storm outside. Declan stood in the silence, his chest heavy but his resolve unshaken. He'd spent his life building for them, sacrificing piece by piece. And in one afternoon, they'd shown him where their loyalty lay. He turned to the envelope on the table, fingers brushing the edge. The family wasn't blood. It was loyalty. And if his daughters wanted to stand with Camille, they could fall with her too. From upstairs, he heard Camille's footsteps as she returned, humming faintly, unaware of the storm she had set loose. Declan straightened his shoulders, a man alone now, but lighter too. No more illusions, no more weight of pretending. Some bridges had to be burned so they could never be crossed again. Declan walked into his lawyer's office carrying a leather satchel packed with documents, phones, and copies of everything Tommy had uncovered. The receptionist barely had time to announce him before he was already in the chair opposite Martin Keller. Divorce attorney, former federal prosecutor, and a man who didn't flinch at dirty cases. Declan placed the satchel on the desk. Everything you need to burn her to the ground is in there. Keller raised an eyebrow, flipping through the first folder. His expression shifted as he scanned the texts, the billing records, the access logs. Christ, this isn't just adultery. This is federal fraud. If this is legit, the FBI will eat her alive. It's legit, Declan said flatly. And I want divorce papers drafted before the week is out. She gets nothing. Not the house, not the savings, not a cent of my pension. I won't bankroll her downfall. Keller nodded slowly, already reaching for his legal pad. With this kind of evidence, the court will side with you. And if the FBI bites, she won't have much of a defense. The next stop was hospital security. Declan met with the compliance director, slid a flash drive across the table, and watched the man pale as he clicked through the files. You realize what you're handing us? The director asked. Evidence, Declan said. Use it. By Monday, he was sitting in a quiet conference room across from two FBI agents. One tall and sharp, the other heavy-set with the calm of a man who'd heard every kind of lie. Declan laid out the timeline, the receipts, the phone records, the messages detailing fraud. They didn't promise anything, but their clipped questions and exchanged glances told him enough. Days later, it hit the news. Prominent surgeon and nurse arrested in Medicare fraud scandal. Wesley Klein's mugshot plastered the evening broadcast, his once polished face sagging with shock. Camille's photo followed, eyes red, hair disheveled, her name listed under conspiracy and wire fraud. Declan watched from his living room, sipping a bourbon as the anchor read through the charges. Neighbors would whisper. The hospital board would scramble. Their daughters would see the truth for what it was, if they were honest enough to admit it. His phone buzzed nonstop. Camille's number, Isabel's, even Ava's. He didn't answer any of them. Silence was its own weapon. That evening, Keller called. "She's already in holding. We'll file tomorrow. With this scandal, she won't contest, you'll walk away clean." Declan stood at the window, watching headlights streak down the wet street. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt control settling over him like a tailored suit. Not the frantic grasp of a man trying to save a marriage, but the steady grip of a man who had demolished a rotten structure and left nothing standing but truth. This wasn't revenge. Revenge was messy, emotional, unpredictable. What Declan had done was cleaner. He had set the facts in motion, and the law had done the rest. Camille could rot in a cell. Klein could rot beside her. Declan Morris had already moved on, one careful, calculated step at a time. Camille's sentencing made the local news, a 30-second clip sandwiched between a high school football score and a weather alert. 5 years in federal prison. Wesley Klein got 12. His smirk wiped clean in a mugshot that would follow him to the grave. Declan didn't watch the coverage live. He read the transcript later, sipping his coffee at the kitchen table. The house was quiet now. No Camille humming at the stove, no Isabel blasting music upstairs, no Ava calling in from Philadelphia to ask for money. Just him, the steady hum of the refrigerator, and the satisfaction of silence. Months bled into years. Ava reached out once, tentative. A birthday card, and signed except for love, A. He didn't reply. Isabel tried too, though her words were sharper, emails dripping with accusation, demanding he fix what he broke. He deleted them all. Family wasn't an obligation. Family was loyalty, and both daughters had chosen their side. When his mother died, he didn't go to the funeral. He stood across the street from the cemetery, hands in his coat pockets, watching from the shade of an oak tree. The crowd was small. He caught a glimpse of Ava holding Isabel's arm, both dressed in black. They didn't look for him. They didn't expect him. He nodded once, turned, and left. Some ties weren't worth knotting back together. Camille's letter came in her 3rd year of prison. A thin envelope, her handwriting across the front in a looping script he knew too well. He opened it, read every word. "Declan, I made mistakes. I was lonely. Wesley filled something you couldn't. Prison has made me realize what I lost. I dream about our house, our dinners, your steady presence. Please visit. I want to talk, maybe find a way back." Declan set the letter down, poured himself a bourbon, and read it again. Regret wasn't the same as loyalty. Regret didn't erase hotel rooms, fraud, or the contempt she'd spat into her lover's phone. He fed the pages into the shredder, listening to the blades chew through her words until nothing remained but confetti. Then he raised his glass and drank to the silence. He had no wife, no daughters, no mother, and for the first time in his life, Declan Morris wasn't weighed down by anyone else's cracks or failures. He was free. Years later, the city had changed around him. Glass towers where old factories once stood, coffee shops where steelworkers used to eat their lunches. Declan had changed too. The lines on his face had deepened, his hair grayer at the temples, but his stride was steady, shoulders squared. He walked downtown after a late meeting, rain slicking the pavement, traffic lights casting long reflections. That's when he saw her, Ava, standing across the street, clutching a bag of groceries. For a moment, she froze. Then she lifted her hand, tentative, A small wave. Not bold, not certain, but hopeful, like a child testing the waters. Declan stopped on the curb. The crowd shifted around him, umbrellas brushing his shoulders, footsteps splashing through puddles. He studied her, older now, more worn, but still his daughter. The part of him that remembered bedtime stories and science projects stirred. But then he remembered the living room years ago, the way she'd said she understood Camille's unhappiness. He remembered her silence when Isabel mocked him, her failure to stand up for truth when it mattered most. Some structures could be reinforced, some cracks could be filled, but others were too deep, too compromised. Sometimes the only choice was demolition. Ava's hand wavered in the air, waiting. Declan's jaw tightened. Then, with deliberate calm, he turned away and walked with the crowd, leaving her behind in the rain. He didn't hurry. He didn't second-guess. His reflection followed him in the wet pavement, tall and solitary, as steady as the beams he inspected for a living. In his mind, he thought of every structure he'd torn down in order to rebuild something stronger. His marriage, his family, his illusions. Some men clung to ruins. He chose freedom. Declan Morris walked on, not as a man abandoned, but as a man who had cleared the wreckage and kept walking, toward whatever came next, unburdened and unbroken.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.